Welcome to the Bombay Bar Podcast. This is a show where we share the rich history of the Bombay Bar Association through its members, both past and present. I'm Senior Advocate Darius Khambata and I will be your host on this episode. Today, we have retired Justice Suresh Gupte on our show. Now, he was the first person in his family to pursue law, and despite some insecurities early in his career, which you'll hear about, Justice Gupte, as we know, would not only go on to be a successful lawyer, but was asked thrice to take up judgeship before his elevation as a judge of the Bombay High Court in 2013. His judgments, as we have all read, are hallmarks of simplicity, clarity of thought, and nuance of law. But they are also subsumed by a strong sense of justice. It's nice to be able to talk to you and to find out about the person behind the judge. So let's start with why you came into this field at all. What made you choose law as your profession?
Well, this goes back to my childhood, actually. As a small child, probably in my primary school, it was my grandfather. And those days, my grandfather had a great influence on me. And, he used to tell people that I want to make him a judge, not just law.
Oh, I see that.
Which I found, later was a rarity. I have heard people say that I want my son to be a lawyer in law, but I have not heard anyone say that I want him to be a judge, except probably maybe judges themselves. So it was he who really, inculcated this thought in me that I should be a judge. And he actually tried to even groom me in that sense, to become a judge eventually. So that was the beginning of my judgeship.
So that's really prophetic of him. So if not born to be a judge, you were certainly groomed to be a judge. And we know that grooming had great success. But before we get to that phase of your life, I'd like to ask you about your childhood, about when you were in school and college. What were your passions and hobbies at that time?
Those days, my first passion was theatre. And, as a schoolboy, I've done many plays. And in college, I was part of the amateur theatre. I've done so many plays. So that I would say my first love. And probably I would have entertained this thought that I could possibly make a career in theatre. I don't know.
But it's interesting that your first love, as you say, was theatre.
Yes.
Because isn't there something, a little of drama about a courtroom?
Absolutely so. You said it. You put your finger on it. Yeah. I think as a lawyer, you need to know drama. I remember amongst our old stalwarts, Khatu Cooper, for example, a way he would address the court, and it was like a performance of an actor. It was so fabulous.
You're absolutely right. There's a little bit of an actor in every lawyer.
Yeah.
Dare I say a little bit of a director in every judge?
Oh, wow. Well said, yes.
So you graduated top of your class in law college.
Yes, I did.
That didn't apparently at all detract you from your commitment to law.
That's an interesting story. I was a student of Government Law College for the first 2 years. And at the end of my second year, I was called by the principal. Those days, Professor Balsara was our principal. And he placed before me an option. He said, either I don't give you the form for your second year exam, or you quit the college and I give you the form. This was because of attendance. I fell short of my attendance, and by a good margin, let me tell you.
That, of course, is common to many of us.
I know I had good many people in my company. So I chose, of course, the other option. I quit my college and I went to New Law College, which I attended only on 3 occasions. First was when I went to seek my admission. The second time when I went to pay my second term's fees. And the third time when I went to collect my prize as the the student who had come first in his class. And in fact, when I went to the stage to collect my prize, I think Justice Arvind Sawant was the chief guest, and Professor Rege, who was the principal. When he saw me, he said, "I'm not seeing you." I said, "Yeah, I am also seeing you maybe on the second or third time, for the second or third time." So that was that. But I was a good student, yes. But those days I was interested in so many things outside the classroom. And as I said, these are the things which really make you as a person, as a
Yes.
person you need to be a lawyer or a judge.
Absolutely. In fact, actually, at a certain level, what you just said is very encouraging to juniors, because you've just exemplified why you don't need necessarily to have a top-flight legal education system to become a good lawyer. And because we've all grown up in an education system that was not at the top of its form. Of course, now it's
Absolutely.
different in India. You have the national law schools. But in our time,
Yes.
we didn't have that quality of legal education. And yet, India has produced some of the finest lawyers and judges.
Absolutely, yes.
So I think you exemplify that in many ways.
Yeah, and I basically feel, what you need to be both a successful lawyer and a judge is that you need to have a very sound common sense. But mind you, it is the most difficult commodity to come by, though it's the most uncommon commodity.
Before we get to your very distinguished career as a judge, I want to quiz you a bit about your days at the bar. Let's start from how you joined the bar, because there is a perception that the bar is a closed shop. It's very difficult for someone who doesn't have family or close relatives in the profession to break into it. And your family had no legal background in that sense. So how did you come to the bar?
When we were doing a theater, a friend of mine just told me that there's a friend who has an office. He's a lawyer. He has a lawyer's firm. So I'll put in a word with him. And he did. He said, "Yeah, please come." That is how I joined the firm. There was a small firm called Varerkar and Varerkar, which I joined as a lawyer. And then when I was working with them, I was doing a matter for Balmohan Vidya Mandir. I still recollect that matter. And where there was some issue relating to section 145, 146, breach of peace provision. It was relating to school premises. And we had engaged C.R. Dalvi, who's a reputed
Of course.
appellate side senior. And I was assisting him. Those days, I had been with this firm for about 4 years. I was always toying with the idea of getting into counsel practice, which, by the way, I came to know about when I joined the firm. I didn't know there is something like counsel practice, that there is something like original side, appellate side. But all this I came to know as I entered the profession. So, as I was telling you, when we were doing this matter, and we of course lost before the High Court, and then I went to Supreme Court. That's the first visit I made to the Supreme Court in that matter. But after a few days, Dalvi sent a word through the client. He said, "Just ask Gupte to see me." And I went to his house in that August Kranti Maidan,
That's
around it. Yeah. And he asked me whether I would like to join him, because he said, "I liked your work." And I told him that I have no connection to the districts, and I don't know anyone. I don't know whether I'll get any work. So I said, "I would like to be on the original side." He said, "Good, then I'll speak to Mr. Dada." And Dalvi spoke to Mr. Dada, and that is how
I see.
I joined the chambers of Mr. Dada.
So I think you very humbly said that you got some lucky breaks.
Yes,
but,
I did.
there's the old adage, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And perhaps that in your case again rings true. of course, we remember C.R. Dalvi. His son and I actually were together for our masters,
Oh.
Manoj. And of course, C.R. Dalvi was a doyen of our
As a
bar.
doyen, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the original side? Because there was again a feeling that it was dominated by those who spoke Gujarati.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, that was true then. It's not,
not true
true any
now.
longer.
That's right.
But those days, yes, it was quite an elite bar. And from a middle class Maharashtrian background, I found it little difficult to, make my way. I did, yes.
Again, very humbly put, I somehow made it because you were a very successful lawyer as well. I know that.
Over a period, yes, but I'm talking about the initial days, when these are the days of struggle, which Mr. Dada used to call staring at the books phase.
I think all lawyers have to go through that phase, at least 5 or 10 years of real struggle. And that probably molds and makes
Yes.
a lawyer. Did you have any role models of senior lawyers that you either worked with or you saw in operation?
Atul Settleward used to be my hero. I really appreciated him for the clarity of his thought, the precise words that he would use to express those legal principles. And, so it was full of substance and yet so pithy. And I really admired that. And I tried to, in a way, inculcate that habit. Then, of course, there was Justice D.R. Dhanuka. Those days, he was a reputed senior counsel. And what I appreciated in him was his knack to get to the heart of the matter, and so quickly would he reach that. That is something, again, I tried to kind of emulate. And of course, Rafiq Dada for his felicity of his expression, which I also feel is an important element of a judge's equipment.
So now let's get to the second phase, as it were, of your career, the judgeship. You say that you always had this idea in your head that you would want to become a judge. But after joining the bar, did you have any second thoughts, or were you totally dedicated to that ultimate goal?
No, I didn't have second thoughts, but I in fact grabbed the very first opportunity when it came my way. But unfortunately, it didn't go through that time. In fact, I was not even 45 when I was first asked. Justice Chandrachud had called me and asked me whether I would take up judgeship, and then I took some time because when it comes, it hits you. So, and I sat with my wife and we did all the calculations, with the judge's salary, can we live? And we knew we wouldn't, but I still said yes, but it didn't go through that time, through the collegium, for reasons unknown to me. As is the situation even now, people talk about lack of transparency, etc., etc. So I didn't know why it didn't happen, but it didn't. And then the second time this offer came to me, I said no because there were some personal circumstances which didn't allow me to get into it. So, and then I thought I missed the bus finally. But again, I was asked the third time, and then I was ready for it.
I would
by
say
then I had created some financial cushion for me, which was good, I believe. So
it's a measure of your clear talent and ability to be a judge that you were asked 3 times. And third time, lucky, I would say, for the bar that you were accepted.
Those are your kind words.
Thank God for that. And now let's come to your career as a judge. This was really your métier. You were groomed to be a judge, as we've heard. And I have to share this with you, that the perception of the bar was then, and it remains, that you were one of our finest judges. You had the clearest minds. Your judgments were pithy, simple, but direct. Even a layman could understand them, and that is, of course, the hallmark of a great judgment. How did you approach the writing of judgments? Because for your judgments are unique in their simplicity and clarity.
I think there are three important elements of a judge's endeavor, and the act of judging. The first, of course, is, and the most fundamental, is the honesty of purpose. And this involves many things. It involves personal honesty. It involves fierce independence as a judge. And it involves commitment to the cause of justice. So that all this is subsumed within what I call honesty of purpose. The second is clarity of thought. And for this clarity, you need to clear the cobwebs and come to the correct legal situation which you have to deal with. And then think of a syllogism which is based on a sound legal proposition as the major premise, and that's how we work towards your conclusion. And the third is the honesty of purpose, the clarity of thought, and the third is the felicity of expression. You need to be clear, you need to be simple, you need to be direct, you need to be precise. And I value precision a lot as legal writing.
I think precision of expression, translating your clear thought into a simple, direct, concise judgment is one of the most important qualities that a judge should have. And you had it in abundance. And in fact, it reminds me of what the Dean Griswold of Harvard Law School once said, that poetry is the true language of a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Because in a few words, you have to encapsulate a very complex thought.
Absolutely, correct.
Did you emulate any judges? You've spoken about Chief Justice Chagla, but were there any others whom you emulated?
I sat on the bench for the first time. I sat with Justice Chandrachud, who's our present Chief Justice. And I admired the way he handled matters, the way he organized his thoughts, and the way he would dictate his judgment there and then after the matter is over. I enjoyed we had a lot of intellectual camaraderie those days, that the few months I spent with him on the bench. That was probably one of my best sittings on the division bench. And in a way, I subconsciously, I must have tried to emulate him. To what extent I succeeded is another matter, but it had a great influence on me. And fortunately for me, it was my very first sitting. And just at the formative days of my judgeship. So, yes.
What I really wanted to ask you is, many of us lawyers feel that we know the formula of how to get across a point in a matter, particularly a complex matter. But I question that. Do we actually know the formula? And it would be interesting to hear from you what you expected of a lawyer and what assistance you expected from a lawyer as a judge in a matter.
Assistance, yes, to the fullest extent, he must bring out everything. But let me tell you what a judge really looks,
That's right.
in a lawyer. The first thing I would look is he fair? Fairness, I think, is the hallmark of the whole system. He doesn't have to be fair only to his client, but to the other side, and above all to the judge, to the society. So this feeling of fairness a lawyer must give. Secondly, his expression must be amiable. Many times the lawyers are so competitive, they are so noisy at times. But this amiable, expression is something, you must endear yourself to the judge. It's, many times if you found, even as a commoner, that you tend to agree more with people whom you like. So that's a psychological phenomenon. So he must have an amiable expression. And thirdly, they have got to be attentive. Many times I have found that the lawyer is full of himself. He's done his case. It's all in his mind, and he wants to somehow put everything across. He's not attentive where the judge is. How the judge's mind is working. How would he be able to tackle what is troubling the judge? So you've got to be attentive. These three qualities I feel are very important in a lawyer. And the best example, of this alertness, this attentive, in this kind of focus, is when you see you work with Fali Nariman. I've done a lot of work with him. He was one lawyer who was always attentive. Absolutely knew what the judge was thinking. That's a great quality.
You're
lawyers
right.
have it.
I think Fali Nariman and Ashok Desai both knew the pulse of the court.
Absolutely.
And they swung around, had
they
remarkable
knew what
turn
the
of
judge
foot.
wanted.
Remarkable turn of
Remarkable,
foot.
yeah.
But I think you make a deeper point in that you must know your judge, because after all, a judge is a human being.
Yes.
And the more complex the matters, the less is the answer in black or white. There's always shades of grey, and you've got to get that right shade.
Essentially, it is grey, yes.
And that makes judging so much more difficult as well, because it's a matter of judgment.
Yeah.
And on which side you fall depends on whether you're a good judge or a great judge. But I'm very glad that the first quality you look for was fairness, because, Judge, I have to tell you that there is a perception, sadly so, that the more aggressive you are, the louder you shout, and sometimes even the more you suppress inconvenient facts, that is good lawyering, which of course is not. But I'm glad that as a judge you're also saying that's not.
That's a complete no-no. In my court, I would never have appreciated that.
That is so encouraging to hear, and especially for our junior bar. I think that is really something they should keep in mind.
Yeah. But by the way, few juniors did that in my court. Generally, I do feel that the bar behaved itself, in my
That's
court.
right. I think the Bombay High Court has a very talented junior bar. It's a great...
No, it's as far as the mid-level bar goes, Bombay has the finest of bars.
And it's something really, it's a great ray of hope for the future.
Absolutely.
But...
Though few are ready to take up judgeship.
That, of course, is something that has to be inculcated and encouraged. But we've talked about your good times as a judge. But did you have any difficulties or did you face any quandaries as a judge?
Not many times, but a few times I did feel, that even the answer that I'm giving is not addressing the real issue. But then I felt I am handicapped as a judge. This is something for the lawmakers to do. I had that feeling a few times. For example, when I gave the judgment in Vaidehi Akash case, which is the kind of ruling authority now on whether the developer of a project, with a particularly redevelopment project, does he have any privity with the rather the society for whom he is developing the project? Does that society have any privity with third-party purchasers who enter into agreements with the developer? This was a very ticklish issue. And I said no, they don't have any privity. But I felt really, I was struggling with my thoughts, and I always felt, where would these people go? Most of these purchasers who were before me had paid their hard-earned money to the developer to get a place of abode, a roof over their head. But I felt this is something for the legislature to handle, and it's part of my discipline as a judge that I can't transgress.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you were always a judge who did justice according to law, not despite the law.
Yes.
And I think in the long run, that actually has a far greater positive public impact than doing the opposite.
Yeah.
But
at times you have got to be creative as well, because many times there are no clear answers. And you need to tweak the existing system to some extent. Of course, so as not to be inconsistent with the
That's right.
established legal models. But sometimes you have to go a bit around it.
You would agree that the common law system that we have leaves a lot of play in the joints for a judge to do exactly that.
Absolutely.
We are not constrained
correct.
by the sheer letter, the black letter law.
There is a free play in the joints, as Justice Chandrachud has said in one of his judgments.
And that is so important for our whole system, because every case in that sense is unique. There's no formula for it. Did you find the transition from being at the bar to becoming a judge difficult?
The only thing I missed when from a lawyer I went to the bench as a judge is once you heard the matters, you've been in court for 5 years, and then you come back to your chambers and you're sitting alone. You miss that whole bonhomie and that whole atmosphere of the bar library that I did miss.
That's right.
But this is of course by way of an aside and in a little lighter vein. But I didn't find it very difficult.
Let's get to Justice Kathawalla. You were with him together as juniors to Mr. Dada, and then of course both of you went to the bench. And post-retirement, both of you share chambers. So would you like to speak on that relationship?
Yeah, we did have a very special relationship. That was from day one, I should say. As I said, when I joined Rafiq Dada and I went to the library to meet the library secretary for library membership, the original site bar library membership. And it was, I think, Induben Shroff, the old lady who was a secretary.
That's right.
And when she saw, you joined Mr. Dada. 10 days back, a Parsi boy, young, fair, with the gold-rimmed spectacles. He joined Mr. Dada. He came to me for the library membership. And as it turned out, that gold-rimmed spectacled Parsi boy turned out to be Kathawalla. So on the very first day of my entry in the library, I met him. And since then, we've been together. We've been together as colleagues, as chamber colleagues with Mr. Dada. And then when we set up our first chamber, it was he and myself. We started our own chambers. And on the bench also, I followed him, maybe after a few years, but I did. And even post-retirement, we are still together. We share a chamber and where we do our arbitration consultancy practice. So it has been a real long association. Yes,
that is really heartwarming, because the bar and the bench is, of course, a place where you make long-standing friendships and warm relationships. And that's often not known to the outside world about what sort of camaraderie there is at the bar and on the bench.
Right.
You were also known as a judge who did not differentiate between juniors and seniors, and that, of course, is a very important factor in judgeship. But getting now to the actual judgments, and many of your leading judgments, for example, you were part of the bench that struck down the beef ban in the state of Maharashtra. And you did so in part. The act was upheld and in part only struck down. And you did so on the principle of Article 21 and the right to privacy. Did you feel that was a difficult judgment to grapple with conceptually?
This is my personal thinking. As a judge, I could not have doubted there was a binding Supreme Court judgment which allowed the ban on slaughter by itself. But what the Maharashtra government did, in addition to a ban on slaughter, it banned the very possession and consumption of beef. So that is how we struck down Section 5D of that act.
That's right.
Which banned the very possession of beef. And there we said, see, you may ban the slaughter, but if it's not unfit for human consumption, then you can't say that consumption of beef is banned. That goes against the personal autonomy of an individual, which the law mandates. And this is subsumed within the right of privacy. This is how we struck down that particular section. And in a separate judgment which I wrote, I also struck down the provision of the criminal prosecution provisions, where the onus was cast on the accused. And at the very initial onus, I should say. Generally, law allows the onus to be cast on the accused after a certain threshold is met by the prosecution.
Yes.
But here the law casts the onus straight away on the accused, and that is something which I struck down. And I've done a lot of work in that area for writing that judgment. Hopefully it has come out in the judgment. But yes, that is how it was.
In fact, that judgment is a very erudite piece of legal writing, because it also manifested the principle that a judge has to rise above personal views and prejudices.
Yes.
And decide according to law, which again, I think the balance that was struck in that judgment shows that.
Yes.
So, Judge, to wind up, what are your final thoughts on how we protect the independence of our judiciary and how we get better people to be judges and we get more Justice Guptes on the bench?
Personally speaking, I feel just now the system that we have is the best that we have, that judges select judges. I don't think there is anything fundamentally wrong with this, except that there is, of course, a scope for improvement, introducing more transparency. There may be notes kept of the discussions between judges, etc. But so far, nobody has proposed a better system. It is better to leave it to the judges than to the politicians. That's my fundamental thought. Secondly, you need to offer better terms to the judges in terms of emoluments and other, so that hopefully good people will take up judgeship. And I think we should continue with this system that we have. Just improve upon it rather than introducing a commission and an appointment commission and all that stuff. I am of the firm view that we cannot have government nominees decide about appointment of judges.
Thank you for sharing that wisdom with us, Justice Gupte. It gives a lot of hope and optimism for the future. And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts.
It was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you so much. Wonderful talk.
Thank you.
That was Justice Gupte taking us to the fundamentals of judgeship. Honesty of purpose, clarity of thought, and the felicity of expression. You just watched an episode of the Bombay Bar Association Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such videos. We also have an audio podcast which dives a bit deeper and is available on all podcast apps.